Instead, we have the opportunity to make a habit of empathy, to recognize ourselves in each other.
Okay.
Normally I run a much tighter ship. Everyone's very excitable, so it's all going out of control.
Aye, sir.
It's true.
That's right.
It's very true.
Okay, everyone needs to get deadly serious.
Well, I feel a little anxious.
Would you like to say more?
Do you want the microphone? Just is your need for like effectiveness?
Yeah, effective, profound. So I get kind of nervous. It's like, God, this better be really good. Let's really do something really profound and kind of overwhelming, you know.
Oh, I can see us driven now. Already.
So no pressure, though.
No pressure, just be profound.
So get on with it, Newt.
Get profound.
Profound empathy.
Okay.
That's neat.
How do you want to proceed? Do you want to ask me a question?
What comes to mind when you think about empathy?
Okay. It's a big question.
It is a big question.
I was thinking about it as I drove over a little bit, and I was thinking about my mother, who I think would be okay with me saying that she has some skill with worry. She's very skillful at worrying, and can lose a lot of sleep worrying about all manner of things, and maybe the next day might be talking about these things. And I noticed that what naturally arises in me, and I think other people can identify with this, is a huge desire to help. You know, I mean, I want to help people, and I want to help the people that I love the most, obviously. And there can almost be a sort of an urgency about helping. You know, got to help. She's obviously worried about this. I need to do something. And upon reflection, I think that the times when when the conversation becomes awkward and disconnected and not particularly enjoyable for either one of us, are probably more likely to be the occasions when I'm kind of urgently trying to find some way to help, you know. Versus responding with empathy. That's where the empathy comes in, right? As my answer to your question. So, and what would the empathy look like? The empathy would look like just being willing to sit there or stand there whilst she talks about whatever it is that's worrying her, and not need her to be doing anything other than worrying about this thing. Just, that's okay. She's expressing worry about this thing. And if I open my mouth to speak, it's then not going to be about, well, have you thought of this? Or maybe we could do this. Now, those are all potentially very beautiful responses which might be very welcome, you know. She might be into my suggestions, and they might be useful. But there's just something about the amazing possibility of the most helpful thing that I can do being to seemingly do kind of nothing very much, actually, you know. And that's in a certain way what I'm aiming to do is nothing in particular, other than just being present with the person speaking, in this case my mother. And that's a much rarer response in the world, in my experience, the world that I move in anyway, America, the UK, places like that. It's a much rarer response than the response of trying to help. Like, what do we need to do, you know? So, and at this point, I'm just interested in pausing for a moment and actually hearing, because we're hopefully surrounded by people here. I'm surrounded by people who are doing just what I'm talking about, right? So people are maybe just listening to me and hearing whatever they're hearing. And so I'm kind of interested right now what anyone's hearing in the room, just in what I've said so far.
Newt, as I'm listening, I'm hearing about you having conversations with your mom and that she's a really important person to you. And that there are times when the conversation has felt awkward. Is that?
On occasion, yeah, that can happen, yeah. And most notably, that my sense is that it's more likely to happen when I'm in some place of urgency about changing what she's experiencing. I want her to be not worried, for example, or to find a solution, something, yeah. That's when there might be more awkwardness, I think. Yeah.
And that when you're able to just be present with her worry, that actually the connection is there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a much greater sense of connection. I can't speak for her, but you know, from things she said, I think that's probably true for her too. Yeah. And, you know, what, as you say that, the connection, it's kind of like, that's sufficient in a certain way as a goal in itself, you know, if it's even a goal, the connection be there. I like to be connected to the people that I'm talking to. And at the same time, I notice that what can arise out of that connection is that change can happen much more easily. If there is something to be done, if there is a thing that she might want to change in how she's looking at something or how she's dealing with something or whatever, it seems like that can arise an awful lot more naturally out of just having a conversation where we're connected and where I'm listening, you know, rather than, I mean, maybe people know about the sort of thing of someone's making suggestions and you push back against their suggestions, or you're making suggestions to someone else and you notice that they're pushing back against your suggestions, and suddenly it becomes this funny pushing thing. There's no openness and there's no spaciousness. That's my sense of it. Whereas to truly be be responding with empathy, it just appears to just open up. How to say this in a way which is not, which is clear. You know, my sense is that there's just more space between the words. People are not talking as quickly. They're not talking over each other. No one's got an agenda that they're trying to push on the other, and no one's going to interpret the other as attempting to push some agenda or something like that. So, yeah, I don't know, if someone reflects that to me, they might reflect it back in a way that makes more sense to me even, but I don't know.
Well, Newt, I think I'm hearing you say that the goal is not change per se, but that the whole process of just being there with that person sets a stage, and then sometimes change really does occur because it seems easier.
Right.
Because there isn't that miscommunication or somebody pulling back from you giving help and they're pulling back.
Right.
So it opens them up also for the possibility of moving some direction.
Yeah. And it's an interesting edge because there are many things that I would love to see change, you know. I'm not just talking about my mom enjoying life as fully as she can, the same way I want everyone else to. So yes, there's that. But in the world more generally, there are lots of things that I'd like to see change. And the people, I mean, obviously there are other forces of nature and so on, but in the places where it's human beings who have the possibility of making change, in order for any of us to have a hand in affecting that change, we would need to speak to them, probably communicate with them in some way. And so it's a funny thing that there are, I could say, things that I would like to change in the world, and yet if I'm talking to someone, there's a funny way in which in the moment of just talking to them and they're speaking, in that moment there's nothing that I want to change in a certain way. In that moment, my focus is not on the change that I'm trying to bring about. My focus is on what they are saying. That's what empathy is for me. and my focus is on the experience that they're having right now as they're talking to me. You know, it might be some politician or some, who knows who it might be, but what's this conversation about? What's going on for them? What's important to them in this moment? You know, let's do that first. Yeah. So it's funny because sometimes to say empathy is not about causing change, it's absolutely not for me. That's not how I hold it at all. And yet it provides a foundation from which connection can happen, and from that place of connecting with each other, we have these big human brains, and all sorts of clever solutions to problems can arise if we just are not struggling with each other, you know.
So let's see.
The willingness to not fix it in the moment gives really a spacious room for that person to be with themselves and for you to be with them as their journey through whatever is up for them in the moment.
Right.
And so that there's actually room for change to happen without your fixing it.
There's room for change to happen. There's also, even prior to that, there's room for them to be just as they are.
To be just as they are.
You know,
right.
like, so if someone's saying to you, no, I'm not willing to do whatever it is to protect the local parklands, you know, we need to build on them or something. And I totally want them to protect the local parklands, but am I willing to just be present with the fact that in this moment they are not interested in protecting the parklands? Can I make space for that to happen? I'm not giving up on the parklands in any way, but I'm just very attentive to what is there. Why is that? Why do they want to build on them? What's important to them about that kind of thing? Yeah, and there's some possibility then, because we're not in a fight. There's some possibility that many people are expecting a fight. Anytime you slightly disagree with them, people are expecting a fight, like this is going to get worse, you know, you don't agree with my viewpoint. The next minute is going to be, we're going to be proving our points, and yeah, no, but yes, no, you know, all this kind of thing will be happening. And when that doesn't occur, what I notice is there's a relaxation which happens in both of us, you know. Now we're just hanging out talking. Oh, really, why is it that you want to build on them? Oh, I see, huh. So I wonder if there's a way we could do something differently which would get you what you're looking for, but would also maybe protect, whatever, it's just a different conversation.
Well, what I'm hearing is empathy takes the steps of first your awareness. I'm hearing you become aware of how you feel about a worrisome feeling towards you, about your mother. And then the next step is to know that you're aware, through this awareness, that you just want to put that aside for now, not try to make a change, but to say to her, to listen to her, to be present for her, to hear her words. And is that
absolutely
one of the first steps, perhaps? Is
yeah, and it's not even just a first step, actually. In a certain, the thing about the self-awareness, for me, in a certain way, it's not. It is a first step. Like I want to. It's good to notice whether or not you're willing to empathize with another person before trying to do so. It's worth noticing at least that, like, am I able and willing right now to listen to this person whose viewpoint I totally disagree with, or am I able and willing right now to listen to whatever it is? You know, my mom's worried about something. Is this what I want to do right now? Yes, actually, okay. And from there, I might then switch almost all of my attention to the other person speaking. And yet, it's not just the first step, because periodically I want to come back. I want to be noticing, like, what if I start to tense up or something? What if I start to get angry with something that the person's saying? I would love to have sufficient, we can call it self-empathy, right? Because it's attention on ourselves. It's the same kind of attention we can give to another, but it's on ourselves. And I would want to have enough self-empathy, enough attention on myself to notice whatever's happening here. Because quite often, I mean, maybe this is meaningful to others in the room, the first little sign of like in your stomach, or, you know, kind of like something, your palms start to sweat or something, I don't know what it might be, you know, your neck gets, wherever it is that we hold tension, and quite often the body will tell us very quickly, you know, and there's something just happened here, like I'm not The truth is I'm not able to empathize in the way that I was doing 30 seconds ago. Something just threw me off, some irritations coming up in me, some defensiveness, some urgency to help even, is coming up now. So now my ability to just be with them is diminished. And so yeah, I do want to include that attention on the self.
So I guess what I'm hearing, instead of thinking of it as a step process, that it's an ongoing process of awareness and choice.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes. Definitely choice.
Ongoing.
Ongoing and definitely ongoing. Like, choice because I think that's very important about empathy in a certain way. Sometimes I think one of the reasons why people don't do it is because two reasons spring to mind. The one is that there's a fear that if I empathize with you, if I just listen to what's going on for you, that you'll mistake me as agreeing with you. And so that's one reason why people don't want to empathize, because I really don't want you to think I'm agreeing with this. So I'm just not going to listen to you. I'm gonna battle against you instead. I'm going to try and prove you wrong, and I'm going to put my point of view and so on. So that's one reason why people might have reluctance to do empathy, for fear of being misinterpreted in that way. The other one is, well, what if I want to stop in 5 minutes' time? Like, there's no end to this. My mum's talking about something she's worried about. What if she's still talking about it in 10 minutes? I might be done, I might want to go and do something else then. And so I better not start to really listen, because then I'm stuck, right? And yet there's choice. There's always choice. The kind of, what would I say? I mean, a way that I've heard it said that I think is true is that you cannot pretend to empathize. You're either doing it or you're not. You're either really focused on what another person's saying, and that's where you want to be, and there's almost a joy in that, and just listening to them. Or you can't at that moment do that. So in a way, it's almost a choice that makes itself, But it's one way of saying it. It's like your body has already decided that empathy's not happening anymore, even though you're still kind of really, oh, that's interesting.
Then you go on to needs. Then you start thinking about, what are my needs here? Do I need to get off the phone, or do I need to end the conversation? Your needs, and then you can also look at their needs.
Yeah, you can switch if you notice again, you can say, well, yeah, what's coming up for me right now, exactly, yeah. And then try and, whatever you choose then, would be an attempt to take them into account as well as yourself. Their needs as well as your own, yeah.
Were you saying that you can do the form of empathy without doing the spirit of empathy?
Yeah, in more or less subtle ways, right? So I was doing a very, be kind of like, oh yeah, where's my cell phone? That's a very overt way of not really empathizing, but it can be way more subtle, right? And inside you're just kind of like, wow, when's she going to stop talking? And so my sense is that there is no point, well, it's a strong way of saying it. There's nothing much for me that I get from faking it. I don't get much from faking it. And I'm not sure that the person I'm listening to really gets much from me faking it. So faking it meaning, that's a judgmental way of saying it, but faking it just meaning that the truth is that I'm really not with them anymore. The truth is I'm much more with my own thinking, or I'm much more with my own, like, what am I going to cook for dinner or something. And so I'm not truly empathizing in the way that I mean it, being present with them.
Yeah, to me it sounds like now you've shifted from needing to empathize with them to making a choice that you're the one that now needs to take care of yourself and empathize with yourself.
Maybe that's what I need in some situations, yeah. Maybe it's empathy that I need in that situation. Maybe it's something else. Maybe I just want to go and have a lie down, Maybe I'm tired. Maybe I'm hungry. Maybe I want to go and have some fun doing something, which for me, something else would be more fun right now. So it might be empathy I'm needing, and it might be some other need of mine which is arising.
Your phone rang.
My phone rang, and I want to
Yes,
I want to be
choice
responsive
again,
to whoever else is trying. Yeah. Something else which is coming to mind is situation like this. You know, imagine that you've been in conflict with someone. It could be a small conflict, a big conflict. You know, it could be very big. It could be the kind of thing that, you know, something where there's divorce, or, you know, a business partnership breaking up, or you deciding to quit, or whatever like that. And there's a lot of in a big conflict, often there's practical matters, you know, like you owe me $10,000 or something. It's this thing, you know, the $10,000 which you want to get, and so on. And then imagine there could be a situation where, by some means or other, legal or otherwise, you get the $10,000 that you say that they owe you, you know, something. And sometimes then what's very noticeable is that it's not enough, because they still think that you're in the wrong.
Yeah.
And you know that they still think that you're in the wrong, right? You've got the $10,000, you know, they still think, and they're still telling other people that you're in the wrong, or something like that, right? So that nothing has changed as far as that is concerned. And my belief is that you could bring in the best lawyers in the world to try and somehow manipulate them into no longer thinking that you're wrong, and it still wouldn't work, right? That's not something that's going to happen through some kind of forceful means or something like that. So what is that? Like, you're wanting empathy about what happened for you. You really want to be known and understood and seen for whatever your side of this conflict is. You just don't want to be thought of as a person who's wrong, maybe. Does this make sense to anyone? What are you getting so far?
Oh, golly. I'm afraid I got lost a little.
Well, imagine, I'll just put it another way. If you've had a fight with someone and you don't think it was all your fault, so to speak, but you know that the other person thinks it's all your fault, is that a comfortable position for you to be in?
Absolutely not.
Right. So what I've noticed about this is that if I stop trying to, if I really dearly long to be seen and to be understood for what my part in what this conflict was, not trying to make excuses for myself or anything necessarily, not trying to condone the behavior, not trying to say that I would do the same thing again, but just wanting to be understood as a human being, that maybe I did some things which I regret, you know, but I'd like them to also see the places where they contributed to this too, that kind of idea. What I have seen is that you can be in situations where you can find no hope at all that the other person is going to respond to you in that way, that they're going to empathize with you, that they're going to see your point of view, that they're going to deeply see what it was that was happening for you. You can be hopeless about it. There's just no way will this person ever do that, right? And what's quite noticeable for me is that when I've been willing to take time in which I ask them what was going on for them in the situation, and I dispense almost, for the time being at least, with this desire for me to be seen and me to be understood and to be forgiven, say, but they no longer hold me as being the one who's at fault. And instead I dispense with that just for the time being maybe, and I switch my focus to, well, I'm not getting the understanding I want here, so why don't I just do some understanding through empathetic listening, through empathy, and why don't I just really ask them and ask them and ask them. They might not even trust me enough to tell me, because they think that I'm some evildoer now or something. They don't even want to tell me what was up for them. But if I keep asking and there's something about that I genuinely want to know, then what I've found is not only do I get to hear what was true for them, and sometimes you could say my heart opens to them in some way that it didn't before, and it's a very different experience just to be me, even if they never change their viewpoint on me. I'm just having an easier time just because I listened. But also often what I've found is that the other person in increasingly kind of miraculous ways starts demonstrating this willingness to see things from my point of view, and these amazing, I've had this happen very recently, these are very amazing glimmers or explosions of sudden realization of, oh my God, I've just suddenly got an idea of what it must have been like for you when that was happening, that thing that we had this conflict about. And it didn't come from, it's interesting, right? It doesn't come from me going, you need to empathize with me right now. It comes from me saying, what's up for you? What was going on for you? And yet the end result is there's empathy for me as well as empathy from me. You know, that's a lot. I've said a lot. Yes. So if anyone has any reflection of that, I'd love to hear it.
Well, I'll try. I'm hearing that when you are in a conflict with someone and they it's important, or let's say if you have a sense of them repeating and their story again, and yet there's some desire on your part, perhaps you're hearing yourself say, I'd like you to hear my side. That was a lot of words, but that's what I'm hearing, that it's your desire, if they start to repeat this story, to be aware that you need to stop, that they're not quite ready to hear you, and you want to empathize with them. Is that?
That's definitely partially true, yeah. That's part of it. That's one way it can show up. Yeah, if I'm wanting them to hear me, but they're just telling me all about their thing, then yeah, it can really serve me in a really surprising way if I just give up on being heard for the moment and just hear them, their story. Yeah, that's definitely a part of it.
So if you really hear the other person in that kind of a kind of conflicted situation, if you really kind of stop and put your own responses to the side and allow them to be heard, genuinely heard, then sometimes it can flip in a really surprising way. And after that, they can sometimes even give you empathy and relate to what you're having to say.
Even if, and I add this, even if they don't use the word empathy, they don't think in terms of the word empathy, they don't study, communicate, nothing like that. And yet, a person, it seems like there's just this thing where if you bring empathy into the dynamic, you bring it into the room, you're bringing it into the room. You would love it for them to be the one bringing it into the room. You'd love them to be the one empathizing with you, but they're not doing that. But you bring it in, and somehow it's almost contagious, you know, that they kind of catch it from you, and suddenly this awareness appears in them of like, oh, I've just realized something about what it must have been like for you, something like that.
Have you in some way put your own resentment aside, or what do you do with that resentment in that moment? When you're feeling, well, I would really like that person to be hearing me and they're not. Right. And that space between feeling resentful and then being able to actually be there with them. I
love that you're asking this question, because this seems so fundamental to me. Because what I'm talking about makes it sound so easy, right? Like, oh yeah, I can just put my knees on one side and just listen to this person, you know, who I've been really annoyed with, you know, like as if it's going to be trivially easy, but it's not. Yeah. So my answer to this question, and it works for what we're talking about here, is that the answer is still empathy, actually. That. And I'm talking about a process which might go on for weeks or months or years, sometimes, you know. So, not that I'm saying that you just have to quit your job and sell your house so that you can afford to just be in perpetual conversation with this person. I'm just saying that, you know, it might be you have a conversation and a week later you have another one and a month later another one. It's this kind of thing. So what am I doing in between in order to be able to show up with empathy for them? I'm getting empathy from somewhere else about this thing. I'm talking to someone else, a trusted friend, who can just listen to me. That's what I'm doing. So I'm actually, you could say, getting filled up with empathy. It's almost like, I sometimes think of it like a milk jug or something, you know. My mum used to have this huge collection of milk jugs, and I think one of them, I have an image of it in my head whenever I think about this. It's kind of like, you know, you've got to pour the milk into it out of the carton in the fridge so that then you can pour it out into the teacup, right? And it feels like you get empathy from someone else, you're getting topped up with empathy, you know, and then you can go and pour it out on another person. I don't know if that image works.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one, thank you.
Yeah, and so that's what it feels like, and there's something to be said. You know, you could say, so okay, if you're getting it from over here from this friend, why do you ever need to get it from the person that you're in conflict with? You know, I'm pointing at Livia as the person that I'm in conflict with. You know. But and yet, you know, we all know. I think sometimes there's something that you get from the person that you're in conflict with when their eyes show you like, oh, I suddenly get how it must have been for you. There's something touched in you which is somehow way more profoundly touched than just getting the empathy from your friend. You know?
Absolutely.
And so there's something that we long for quite often. If we get attached to it, then that's a problem because it might never happen that we get the empathy from this person that we're in conflict with. But we long for it quite often. So this getting empathy from somewhere else is a way that supports us in just staying present with them, and maybe the outcome will be this profound level of, and astonishing profound level of connection that can happen sometimes, right? When someone suddenly gets you in a way that you didn't think they were ever going to, you know. So,
What I hear is that when you're in communication with that other person that you may have had the conflict with, you want the understanding from that person.
that
You
would
can
be my
still feel-
preference, yeah.
Right, you can still fill yourself up with empathy from someone else, but you want the understanding from that person that you're truly in communication with and giving that empathy to.
Yeah, I think it's because other needs are met. If I get it from them, if I get the understanding, the empathy from them, the person I was in conflict with, there's some way that contributes to some like release inside of me, or some healing maybe, some inner tension that is let go of or something, some protectiveness maybe that I can release. So there's a lot of kind of particular needs which can be met if I'm fortunate enough to get the understanding from the person I was in conflict with.
So I'm hearing hope that if you want to be close and have a close connection with someone and it's not quite working, that you find hope by getting empathy from somewhere else, and then coming back, when you come back to this person, you're in a more giving place, and that hopefully there is that awakening sometime or connection that can happen with them because you can be even more present.
That's all true
That's
for me. That's all true for me. Yeah.
So connection is the goal here, the key, or the desire. Love?
Well, I'm pausing on connection because it's so all-pervading through all of this. So in a certain way, it's like, it's the goal that I'm holding a lot of the time. When I'm getting empathy from the other person, I want connection. When I'm attempting to communicate with the one I was in conflict with, I want connection. When I'm stopping and checking in with myself, am I sick of all this and I want to go and just, eat some pizza and watch a movie? And,
Right.
I'm connecting with myself to notice that. Yeah. It can sound, I'm just, as you say this, something about you saying it, I don't know quite what. There's a way that when we talk about this, it can assume a certain, like, it can seem kind of like a very stiff, work-like thing that we're talking about, and that's not really my experience about it. It's kind of like, it's no more work than if you think of anything that you do. I mean, I'm sitting next to an amazing painter, right? So, showing up for something that you love doing, it still requires your focus and your discipline and your attention and your energy and your time and all of this kind of thing. But it gives back amazingly, is my thought. So I'm scared sometimes when talking about empathy as a practice, which it is for me. It's a life practice for me. That it can sound like, got to get some empathy about that thing that happened with Livia, so I can go and talk to her about it again. And why doesn't she just get over it? Then it'd be like easy. That's not really. Well, it's more kind of like, wow. I get to have an amazing connection with the friend who's empathizing with me. A real sense of human connection with this person, regardless of what happens with Livia. And then I go over here and she's calling me names, you know, and everything. Okay, this isn't very enjoyable right now. But I just hang in there for as long as I can, and then I get more connection. And then suddenly things can start to shift here, and when they do, it's just phenomenal. Freedom from the drudgery of that difficulty that we had, you know, and the opportunity to see Livia, you know, I'm just still choosing Livia as if we've never been in conflict, but she's just sitting right here so I can look at her. Yeah, so it's not, for me, it's not drudgery at all, you know, and it's definitely something where I want to be always including myself in who's getting empathy from me, whoever I want to give it to, and I'm included. Who am I noticing and focusing on? Whoever it is, and also me. So when this process becomes a bit tiresome, that doesn't mean there's a problem, it just means I need to go and attend to whatever I'm currently wanting to attend to, pizza and movie or whatever it is, you know. So, and then come back to it. And then, so I'd love for someone to reflect that, or what's coming from that, yeah.
Well, I had a question about it.
Yeah.
I hear that, what I hear overall is that empathy is a moment-to-moment experience.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is, and you're addressing it in a way, my question is, how do you, when there isn't any place for empathy right then, how do you break that off without, and go tend to yourself some other way? How do you stop it?
Mm.
Because you've been giving this person empathy, and all of a sudden you can't anymore.
Right. Yeah. It's something. Well, I'm. It's one of these moments where, in our group setting here, you know, often what we'll do is to see what other people would do in that kind of a moment. You know, when the focus switches to, you know, I don't have it to give right now. I've been really focused on you, and I've been really trying to connect with you, and suddenly I notice like there's not an availability of resources here anymore to do that. Or I'm too hungry, I'm too tired, I'm too distracted, I've got a dental appointment, you know, whatever it might be. So what do you do? And that, so I'm just checking with myself, like, with the power of editing, I know that we can say anything, and Edwin can deal with it later, so. Is that a direction that's of interest to you to go around? Are you happy with
way,
it?
yeah. You were talking about empathy. You were asking for a reflection. You didn't kind of get a reflection on that, but
that's true.
Yes,
you're so. And reflecting, what you were saying was you felt that empathy wasn't drudgery, and it wasn't just a process. There was something more to empathy that was what I was hearing.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny that the other man in the room is doing the reflection on this particular point, because maybe that's what's bringing to mind as well. Often in groups where people are deliberately meeting to talk about empathetic communication, compassionate communication, this kind of thing, there's a huge imbalance in the direction of the feminine, shall we say, more women than men. And my joke, although it's true, is that, you know, the only place I can get a room full of men to teach is in prison, you know, if it's a men's prison. Not strictly true, actually. Also, people who've just come out of prison, you know. If they go to a residential halfway house or something, then I can get a room full of men to work with. And so not only is it not drudgery, but nor is it something which is alien to being a man. Which is what I think, just to speak to that for a moment, I think there are many men who think of it as being like an alien idea which belongs in the realm of women. This is maybe an edgy thing to talk about, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. And the reason for that is that there's, well, who knows what the reason for it is, but it's just like a notion that I have about empathy, and you know, like sometimes I'll hear men say, you know, I just want to, you know, just get on with it or something. why do you have to listen to all this talk, let's just get on with it, or something like that. So there's some focus that you get there on action and resolution and solving the problem, fixing the thing, that kind of thing. And one of the things which is missed in that, I have no problem with it. Some people have a drive, you were talking about being driven earlier. Some people have a drive to just like fix it, do it, get it done, Okay. The room we're sitting in wouldn't have been built if there wasn't someone driving to build it, so I don't have a problem with that. And sometimes the most effective thing you can do is empathize. If you're driving to get something done, sometimes the most effective choice you can make is to listen to whoever you're talking with. It doesn't matter if you're an engineer, if you're a husband, whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter what your gender is, that within the sort of desire for effectiveness, within the desire for productivity, that sometimes not only is empathy not drudgery, it's also not, it's not a soft skill, as they call it in industry sometimes. There's sometimes nothing soft about it. It is the only thing which is powerful enough to correct the situation that you're currently struggling with. And it's missing because you think of it as being something that doesn't belong in your realm of like effectiveness and productivity and something. So it's missing from your toolkit, and you try everything else to right the situation in your marriage or in your company or something, and the situation doesn't change itself, It's in the nature of the world that problems and conflicts arise, no problem with that. But if you ignore empathy as a valid tool, you're throwing away sometimes the only tool which is going to actually get you. And I've experienced this in industry when I used to have a team that reported to me when I was in the corporate world. I've experienced this where I didn't have empathy available to me in the way that I do now. And it was only later, speaking to someone that I had such difficulty communicating with and working with, that I found out what had been missing. We both worked it out together in a later conversation, a conversation during which I was empathizing, because I now understood about listening and focusing. And only then did it become clear, like, oh, I was trying to manage a team of people without really having the skill of empathy developed. And that's not an easy thing to do, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's just spinning off from...
This is a wonderful conversation, of course, and what it brings up for me is that empathy is not only a verbal communication, that empathy can be a nonverbal communication. There may be sometimes that somebody's lost a loved one. They don't need the communication, they need a hug. They need to cry on your shoulder. And that's empathy as well. So I think there's more than one realm of empathy when it comes to communication, nonverbal communication. And there's a lot of different areas within the definition of empathy.
Right. It starts, to quote my mentor's mentor, I think, Marshall Rosenberg, empathy is a silent pursuit. And then it's like it's the being with the other person, and how that then shows up. It might show up with words. You might say something. You might just hug them. That might be the next thing which arises. And whilst hugging them, are you thinking about dinner? Whilst hugging them? Because that would be a hug and thinking about dinner. It wouldn't be a hug and empathy. But if you're hugging them and you are just being with them, and you're in proximity now, but you're feeling them, and you're attentive with all of the senses to them. That would be, for me, a hug and empathy at the same time. It might just be a look. You're talking, I don't say a word, but I'm just here. And you can tell that I'm here, and what I'm doing is empathy as far as I'm concerned, silently being present with you as you're talking. Yeah.
Well, so Newt, if we go back to what you were talking about a little bit before that, because what I was struck with was that empathy is such a powerful tool, and the toolkit is what you're saying, and that many times we, and oftentimes men, are saying, let's drive ahead really forcefully and let's get the job done, and what is this thing about listening to somebody? But you're saying that without that tool, you may not ever get to what you want to do. That's a very powerful tool, and maybe the most straightforward way to get to your goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I was really struck by that.
Yeah. It's... I mean, I gave one example from my work world, but I've been into many organizational settings, companies, and there are such problems, you know, like that they're not finding ways to overcome. And there are lots of talking about what do we need to do and all this kind of thing. And as an observer from outside, and you're watching the interactions between the people, you notice there's no culture of actually making sure that you've heard what the other person said and making sure that you've understood it before starting to pull it apart. You know, people, they haven't even understood your idea about how we're going to double our revenue in the next, you know, year or something. They've not even understood what you're saying yet, and they're already saying, no, but that would never work because you know, just straight there. And if you stop them and said, what is it that would never work? Can you just tell me about the thing that would never work? What they'd tell you back would be something totally other than what you'd suggested, because they didn't hear the thing. So there's this absence of attention. It's almost like you could call it attention to detail sometimes in a certain way. You know, maybe that's a different way of talking about a facet or an aspect of empathy that people can see as being valuable, you know. But there just is an attention to, not just to detail, but to everything when you are empathizing. Not just you have an idea about how we can double the revenue. It's, if I'm paying attention to you, I can also notice whether or not there's some hesitancy in you as you talk about that idea, or enthusiasm, you know. And if there's hesitancy, I want to hear about that. So I'm hearing you say that, but you seem to be a bit hesitant about it. So what's the hesitancy about? And if you're excited, you seem really excited about this, like as if it's a new idea or something. So is it new? Is it something we haven't talked about before? If I'm paying attention to you fully, I get more than just your idea. Your idea might be brilliant or it might be useless, but I get more than that. And from getting the more ideas get sparked. And my willingness to listen to you and invite your ideas and take an interest, it means that you're way more likely then to come up with even more ideas. Compare that with me being like, no, that would never work, because how likely is someone to then feel free to express their next idea and their next idea if I'm shooting their first idea down without even really listening to it and checking that I understand it? So there's a way in which I'm serving myself, even in a business context, you know, if I empathize, if I really focus on the person, their ideas, how they feel about their ideas, etc. Because they're just more likely to come forward with even more ideas, one of which might be the key, you know, that kind of idea. So yeah.
I would like to try beating back what I heard.
Yeah.
So I'm understanding just your last thing you said, and then I'd like to go back to the other if I can. But the last thing I heard was the significance of, again, being present and having a willingness or an intention to be present for somebody and really listen. And that more comes out of that. There's a flow. There's more of a flow when you're really present and your intention is there. So, but when we go back... And
it could be a flow of ideas sometimes.
Exactly.
It could be just a flow of connection, and sometimes it could be a flow of solutions and ideas. And
creativity.
Creativity, exactly, yeah.
So far so good?
Yeah.
Okay. The other piece is I want to go back to when you said about connection, that you pause. And then we talked about men versus women in terms of their availability to this process. And to me, I think intention, if I'm understanding it, is the key, that words like connection and feelings get in the way. And that the aliveness and hope and joy that comes from hearing and being heard is missed sometimes. If I'm understanding because of the process, that the words get in the way, that people judge the words or experience
Sure.
the words as critical,
Right.
or you're controlling or demanding.
Yeah, or you're just using words which are weird to me or something like that.
Yeah,
Like
so
that,
I was
don't
trying to capture, if I'm understanding you correct, that the most important thing here is the aliveness and the joy and the love, or something that comes from the process, and having an intention to do that rather than worry about words. That was a lot said, but I'm struggling with your.
So I'm gonna check what I'm getting, even to double check for myself. It's the piece that I'm pulling out of what you're saying that resonates for me very strongly is this. My intention is first and foremost to empathize, which means to be present with you.
Yeah.
Really, really profoundly present with what's going on for you, your ideas and how you're feeling, what you're wanting, your needs. And then I might use some words to just deepen that, or to convey to you that I'm with you. Or to help me to stay with you, like, oh, can I just double check, is this what you were meaning? So I might use some words. Now, I want to use words which convey to you that I'm with you. So I don't want to use words which are going to kind of increase distance between us. So if you're a person who doesn't like the word feeling,
Right.
or doesn't like the word connection, or whatever, then I'm not going to use those words to try and convey to you that I'm with you, because those words they're not very comfortable for you, that actually distances you from me in some way, or you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm does this map to what you're talking about in some way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it leaves me with a question.
No.
But I can be quiet. What is the intention? Where does it come? Okay.
Presence for me is the intention in a way, or I could say it another way. I could say empathy is its own intention, but empathy and presence for me are very aligned. That it's about, this is what's happening now. You're talking to me, and my breakfast isn't happening, and nor is my dinner. This is what's happening, and so this is where I want to be present with this. You're speaking to me, and that is as close to a definition of empathy as I can succinctly give in this moment. I can maybe give a different one in another moment. And I'm also, Marilyn wants to speak, and I'm also remembering the thing that Helene talked about as well before. So at least my response to that too in the time we have available.
Newt, as I was listening to your response to Mercedes about what is your intention, in that 2 seconds I already lost the word that you said. Would you be willing to repeat it for me?
I said presence.
Presence,
Yeah.
okay. Because at the time I heard the word presence, it also brought up when you've said before, just seeing that person as another human being. Does that match for you? Or is there some other part of it that's a little?
No, I like that. How would I say that? I suppose implicit in presence for me is that my attention is not on my judgments of you, if I'm listening to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so if my attention is not on my judgments, even if they're occurring, judgments come, and if my attention is on you, then all of these other ideas, like seeing you as a human being, seeing you as just as important as me, compassion for you, equality, your needs are as important as my needs. In a certain way, there's just loads more space for that. Because if I think of you as being less important than me or something, that's just some judgment I'm having of you, which I'm not interested in at the moment because I'm focused on you. Do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So even if something's come in to interfere with equality here and mattering and so even if that's trying to come into my mind, I'm so not interested in it, I'm just interested in you, that there's automatically, for me, within this kind of empathic presence, there's automatically equality. And it's important to me actually, because my hope at least, and I've had feedback from people in a variety of different situations. Is that me?
Yeah.
That's my audio interfering with the thing. Makes you happy about editing, doesn't it? I don't know, I thought I'd switch up to silence, so I don't know how that happened. Anyway, how's my hair? Okay. Take two. So, yeah, the importance for me in this, in a certain way, is that when I'm talking to someone in very different circumstances than me, maybe you not with the same access to resources, you know, someone who doesn't have money, someone who's homeless, someone who's in prison, someone who feels less powerful than me because of whatever reason, that my intention at least is that I don't give attention to those things, even if they're giving attention to those things. They think that I'm in a power position over them or something, but I don't want to give attention to that. I want to give my attention to what are they saying, just like that. And what seems to happen is that the other person feels that, and there's some way in which you start having this level of connectedness with people regardless of their gender or their position, their station in society, you know, all of that, their wealth, etc., etc. Being present with people in this way appears to just allow connection to happen, and out of that connection you might learn things which you would never learn from them if they continue to just see you as a higher up or as a lower down or as a scary whatever. You know, you wouldn't get to find out what you get to find out when you just are present with people. So, yeah. And I wanted to just respond to Helene's question as well before about, you know, you've been attentive, you've been doing this empathy business, you've been attentive to someone and present with them, and now the truth is that you don't want to be anymore, you know. So what then? And we've played with this a little bit before, talked about this a little bit before, I'm sure we will again. But for me it comes down to, can I be, am I okay with the fact that sometimes I'm done with listening? Am I okay with it? Am I okay with the fact that sometimes the time's up, my meter has run out, and now I need to go and get pizza or something, you know? And if I'm not okay with that, then it's going to be a real problem for me to break off from conversation with someone when they're needing to be heard, so to speak. You know, they're talking a lot and they're really agitated or whatever it is. If I'm not okay with the fact that, you know, there's probably going to come a time in either 5 minutes or 5 hours when I'm going to be done with this for now, and I'm going to want to do something else. And that's okay, you know. And if I don't feel okay about it, then what I want to do, this is great, punchline, what I want to do is get empathy from someone else about that. I want to be heard about the fact that I have trouble breaking off conversations, even though I'm totally done with the conversation and I don't want to listen anymore, that I feel awkward or uncomfortable or scared or something like that. I would want to get empathy from someone else about that, you know, because I will notice that being heard about it will help to free me up so that the next time I'm in that situation, I'll feel more ready to just be like, oh, I'm kind of done right now, and that's okay, you know. So that's my first answer. How you would then say it, you know, who knows, you might just say it as simply as, I've been enjoying listening to you for now, you know, for a while, and now I'm feeling kind of like moving on. Would it be okay with you if we resume the conversation another time? So, does that make sense in some way?
Yes, and I think you hit the nail on the head with me.
Oh, right.
That was a...
Yeah.
That was the reason.
Right.
I wasn't feeling comfortable with it.
Right. Yeah.
I think also the fact that you're saying that could we resume it at another time is right there telling the person, I'm not really cutting you off, we're just taking a break.
Right.
So they don't feel so offended.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can even say, even instead of saying, I never want to talk to this person ever again.
Yeah.
You know, the truth is that once you've got some empathy, actually, you might be very willing to resume the conversation, especially if there's someone that you love, actually. It's just you're kind of hating them at the moment, but, you know. That's the truth. Is we've all had that experience of like, I'm just never going to talk to her again, and then you do, right? And it's okay. So, yeah.
And you're in a different place by the time you get back to talking to them again anyway.
Right, exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
you may be in a better place.
Yeah, totally.
I had one last question. Just how was this for you? This talking about empathy.
I feel very energized. Actually, it's there's something that I mean, whether or not everyone in the room will agree that I actually live by this, they could tell you for themselves. But my intention when I come into a group to facilitate is to make as much space for other people to practice as possible. And even if I am doing talking, that what I'm doing is often just doing empathy so that I'm modeling it so that other people get to watch it being modeled. So I'm not very often kind of just talking about my ideas and my opinions and my experience of things. It's not something that we make a lot of space for. Everything's request driven in the group though, of course, so if ever you're like, I just want to hear you talk for 2 hours or for an hour, whatever it's been, then we could do it. But so it's it feels like in a certain way it's meeting my need for balance in an interesting way, because we do accentuate practicing empathy, practicing honest self-expression, and so in a way just that piece about sharing my personal experience of it and so on, this has met a need for balance with that, to be doing that for an hour. And I've really loved the format of getting reflection and actually having empathy happening while talking about empathy. It's been fun.
Do you get heard?
I do feel heard.
Empathize with?
My need for empathy is met.
See the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.